Hi everyone, thank you very much for the introduction, and also thanks in particular to Leo for the to introducing some crucial concepts in causal inference, which are making me an assist for my presentation. What I want to focus on today is investigating the challenges and potential of leveraging foundational model for scientific application, for scientific discovery, in particular when causality is involved. And probably this talk is going to be, the flavor of this talk is going to be much more applied than the previous. And the way I want to structure it is going through the motivating example is driving my research. So what I'm trying to do recently is inspiring my research by real-world problems. And I'm doing is interacting with, particularly with biologists, neuroscientists, and physicians recently. And the problem I'm going to share today comes from a real-world problem in experimental ecology. Particularly, I'm collaborating with this group of biologists at ISTAnt, trying to investigate the concept of social immunity. And the way to investigate this problem is designing a proper randomized control trial, okay? So on ants, and investigate like how do their behavior is affected by certain intervention, okay? So assigning some treatments. So this is actually the most classic design of an experiment in causal inference. We have a treatment. Per observation, we have some experimental setting of interest, and we have a certain behavior of interest. We want to estimate the treatment effect at population level, which we commonly measure through the average treatment effect. What's the bottleneck in this pipeline? The bottleneck is that we don't observe the outcome directly, but and we cannot do it on the fly. Okay, we can only record what's going on, and then we need an annotator. We need a procedure to annotate what's going on. Okay. So classifying frame by frame what's happening in the scene. And in the past this was done by a domain expert, but you can easily imagine how costly and slow it can be. And now the hypothesis is, can we leverage a pre-trained model to draw a scientific conclusion? So if we have a video of some ants interacting, can we rely on a pre-trained model to classify frame by frame what's going on, and then plug in this prediction for valid scientific, to draw valid scientific conclusion? I'm gonna try to investigate this problem during this presentation. So this problem is naturally called the prediction-powered causal inference, and a bit more formally, we have a tuple. So we have a treatment of interest, some experimental setting W, an outcome of interest y, and some high-dimensional measurements x, okay, following a certain distribution. We only observe a random sample TWX without observing the outcome of interest, and given a certain model, outcome model, we are wondering if we can identify and estimate these our causal estimate of interest at population level on the prediction power sample. So with prediction power sample, I refer to this sample, TW and G of X. Okay? So just a moment to relate this problem with this existing literature. This setting got some traction in the last few years among statisticians. Okay? And takes the name with, and with prediction power inference in general, we refer to the setting where some high-dimensional measurements are paired with some outcome of interest, and we want to make some inference on the outcome. And we are wondering if we can leverage a semi-supervised setting where on top of these pairs we have much more observation just of the high-dimensional measurements. And we are wondering if you can boost efficiency in distribution. Okay, but indeed, in prediction power inference, we are mainly people are mainly focusing on efficiency in distribution, while in prediction power causal inference, we are looking at a broader setting. So we are actually contextualizing inference in a real-world scientific experiment, where we pair these high-dimensional measurements and outcome with some other variables, the treatment and the experimental settings, and these problems and this generalization come with peculiar challenges, like what if the distribution of these experimental settings change? And what if the joint distribution with the outcome of interest change? So try to contextualize the problem a bit more and try to understand what are the challenges. What a good predictor outcome model G should be in order to support valid scientific discovery? Well, a property we may desire from such outcome model is being conditionally calibrated. This is crucial if we are identifying our causal estimate of interest with any form of adjustment, and it's trivial to observe that the identifiability transfer on the prediction power sample. A bit more technical is to actually show that even the property of an estimator trained on the prediction power sample, if the outcome model is conditionally calibrated, can transfer. So for example, we show that for using AIPW, both efficiency and double robustness transfer on this model. But so if you want to recap, if you want to run causal inference on a prediction power sample, we want this. We want our outcome model to satisfy some properties. Question: do we really need these properties? Well, if the model is perfect, okay, obviously it's also like conditionally calibrated, and it's gonna support valid prediction power causal inference. But if the model is not perfect, being good in prediction is not necessarily the same thing as being good in a causal downstream task. So being good in prediction power causal inference, okay? And why? Because the error can propagate quite badly if you don't control it, okay? I'm just showing a simple result on a very controlled setting. So if we consider like even a randomized control trial where the treatment is binary, the outcome is binary, if our outcome model is accurate 1 minus epsilon of the time, then the bias we could get from the true treatment effect, average treatment effect, and the estimation we may have plugging in our outcome model can rise up to 2 epsilon. It can seem it can seem limited, but actually it's not the case, because this is the absolute effect bias. So if the effect is limited, it can validate any scientific analysis. Let me try to emphasize it through an example. So on the previous dataset I described, okay, I'm reporting here the performances on a bunch of models, fine-tuned on some annotated data, and based on some famous Bayesian transformer encoder, okay. On the x-axis, I'm reporting the balanced accuracy, while on the y-axis, I'm actually reporting this bias, and it's actually the relative bias between these, the performances of this prediction power causal inference, in this case through AIPW, and the actual causal inferences on the true outcomes. And what we can see that even for the best performing model, okay, the best performing models based on Dino V2, okay, they're quite robust in accuracy. They're all above 95% of accuracy, okay? But the relative error vary a lot, from plus 30% to underestimating by 40%. And if you don't control it, if you don't control it, like at random in one trial using a prediction-powered inference, we may significantly overestimate or underestimate the effect. So I'm taking this example also try to link a classic definition of good representation to our problem. So more than 10 years ago, Benjo defined what's a good representation as a representation able to extract useful information for to build a classifier on top for prediction. So enabling to solve a statistical downstream task. But here is what I want to stress here is that it's really important to specify what's the task we're interested in, and if our downstream task is causal, maybe like we should consider other metrics, and maybe a good representation for a statistical downstream task is not necessarily as robust for a causal downstream task. So more broadly, actually, the hope of prediction-powered inference stands actually in generalization potential. Okay, so and the desiderata of practitioner is the following: can we rely on a pre-trained model, potentially fine-tune it on some annotated experiment we already have? Okay, and then use this model to annotate a target experiment and draw valid scientific conclusion on it. This is the second thing we focused on, and actually where we relied our where we ran our experiments. So before moving forward to the methodology, let me try to stress a bit more what are the challenges in this generalization. There are several challenges. Really more concretely, generally speaking, we don't want to that our outcome model is over-relying on spurious correlation. And how it can happen in practice? Let's say that the practitioners, the biologists, are actually running this experiment in batch of 9 videos at time, okay, and on a certain platform where the background is actually marked. What if we just annotate the first batch of experiments, we use it for fine-tuning, and then we want to annotate all the others? And what if maybe on the top right video there is a certain behavior of interest which is never happening? Maybe a model could exploit the spurious correlation between the background and the fact that that behavior is not happening, okay, and leverage the test time. But this would invalidate any scientific conclusion. Similarly, another challenge we may have is that what if actually the treatment is detectable? Okay, so for example, we can detect its visual appearance, maybe because it's because of some liquid residuals. Okay, but between different experiments, we are actually considering different treatments with different effects. So and maybe during training we actually exploit this spurious correlation between the training and the outcome, and so we bias our prediction power sample, invalidating any downstream causal conclusion. Well, the way we propose to approach this problem is looking at the representation space and try to enforce a certain property. Particularly, the idea is the following. So, just a bit of theory. Obviously we cannot define. We cannot generalize wherever. We need two experiments. The two experiments we are transferring on to be similar. What do I mean with similar? I mean that they share the same annotation mechanism. Okay, so the relation, the mechanism between the high-dimensional measurements and the outcome of interest, which is actually what biologists commonly assume and rely on. Then, yeah, I'm just remembering what do we mean for a model to be valid. A model is valid if our causal estimand of interest can be identified and its value corresponds to the same statistical estimand plugging in the predicted outcome. Finally, the constraint we want to enforce in the representation space, which we call causal lifting constraint. We want to enforce that the mutual information between a representation of the high-dimensional measurements and some experimental settings, and I'm going to describe, conditioning on the outcome of interest is equal to 0. What does it mean? It means that we want that the representation of our model is independent with respect to the treatment and some experimental settings, conditioning on the outcome of interest. So it's not bringing any additional information about the treatment and the experimental settings on top of the outcome. And here with W tilde, I'm referring to any a valid adjustment set, particularly the one we are using then for the causal downstream estimation. And yeah, why this is interesting? Because then we can show a bit more technically than in this sentence, but that more or less causal lifting transfer model validity among similar experiments. More practically, if you have an experiment A and an experiment B, and if we have a model valid for experiment A, maybe because we learn from data in a supervised setting, and then we can also show that causal lifting holds on the experiment B, then such model is also valid for experiment B. And our hypothesis is that enforcing this property, it's easier to enforce conditional calibration on target. And yeah, and so we practically propose a way to enforce this constraint. There is already a huge literature on how to enforce such conditional independence during training. We propose a new approach tailored for our application of interest, but I do agree that depending on application of interest, different approaches should be implemented. Particularly, we proposed this ring weighting idea, mainly motivated by the fact that in our application of interest, the treatment and the experimental settings are limited and discrete. Okay, so we could actually manipulate through reweighting the empirical risk, simulating of minimizing the risk on a fictitious distribution where the outcome is independent to z, where z is tw tilde. Okay, so the variables we want to be independent on, conditionally dependent on, and this is enough because minimizing over such distribution would bring no signal to the model to retrieve a spurious correlation. And so we validated this approach in practice on the setting I described in the beginning, and these are the results. So our target experiment is ISTAnt, a benchmark for causal downstream task. We already released last year, and the training is a new experiment of interest for the biologists we collaborated with. They anyway annotated, and we try to achieve zero-shot generalization. So just training on such experiment, solving the causal inference problem on ISTAnt without any annotation, while there are some differences among the two experiments regarding since they're considering different treatments and recording setup. What I'm reporting here are the confidence interval of the best performing model per encoder and per method. So in particular, in black on top, we have the ground truth, which is given by estimating the causal effect on target population given the outcome of interest on with AIPW. And while for each other method, ERM stands for empirical risk minimization. Virex and IRM are two invariant training, while DERM is ours. I'm reporting the confidence interval of the prediction-powered AIPW. And what we observe is that generally, as expected, for minimizing the empirical risk, we have no guarantees in obtaining valid generalizing causal inferences. Similarly, for invariant trainings, since they're actually not enforcing the invariances we are looking for, while despite there is still margin to improve these models, all the causal downstream estimation made by relying on the Deconfounded Empirical Risk Minimization are actually overlapping with the ground truth. Since it's not straightforward to quantify the benefit of our method on real-world data, because we actually don't have access to the ground truth, but only to an estimation with wide confidence interval. We propose to actually replicate the same setup on asynthetic data, particularly manipulating a mini dataset and simulating our experiments where we want to investigate the effect of the pen color on the digits we may write. And so here each entry represents the treatment effect bias, the average treatment effect bias between the true ATE, in this case we can control it, and the prediction power AIPW estimation. And what you observe is that even if in distribution our method is a bit less efficient, okay, it may solve some instances that are not solvable by the other methods. So both empirical risk minimization and class and standard invariant trainings. Yep. So to wrap up, the main takes from this talk are that first of all, AI for science requires strong guarantees, and this may seem trivial, but we should never leave it for granted, and we should keep remembering that. And the second takeaway is that actually being good in statistical downstream task is not necessarily the same thing as being good in a causal downstream task. So it's really important when designing a full pipeline to keep in mind the ultimate task. So prediction per se is not prediction for causal inference in our case. And finally, I hope that this problem formulation and approach, and also the dataset, offer a new perspective to interpret causal representation learning towards like representation learning for causal downstream tasks. So if I deliver properly the message of this paper, you may observe that I've never discussed about like causal discovery in the latent space. I've just talked about representation learning, and then the way I'm evaluating the goodness of this representation is in the capability of then providing valid confidence interval to a certain for a certain causal estimate of interest. Some scientists may be interested in, and yeah, I also and this could be benchmarked in practice. So yeah, the talk, the discussion I shared today are mainly based on a recent work we released on Archive, and collaborating with amazing scientists, in particular Ilker and Pierre, who are also finishing now their PhD. Some biologists, as anticipated, Lucas and Silvia, and my PI, Cordelia and Francesco. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Did you try any other experiments, like engineering experiments, for example?
No, engineering not really. I'm now collaborating with some neuroscientists and physicians, as anticipated, and I believe that the setting is quite similar, even among different domains. So, for example, there are a lot of people in neuroscience trying to study diseases like autism on mice, and even if maybe for them an intervention is on the genotype or other treatments, exposure, then ultimately what they do is actually recording videos, and in order to obtain some valid scientific conclusion, they need to annotate and then run some causal inference. But even for cancer detection, I think there are or cell perturbation, there are a lot of challenges and problems which can be formulated in this framework, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is just a basic question, but
yeah?
Could you just clarify what zero-shot inference for prediction means in this particular setting?
Surely. So with zero shot is referred to the prediction. So training a model, considering a pre-trained model, or fine-tuning it on a similar experiment, and imputing the missing outcome on a new experiment without never observing the outcome of interest, just relying on the assumption that the annotation mechanism is the same.
So for this new observation, you don't observe the outcome, and you don't observe any covariates.
You do observe the covariates because these are cheap to collect. You also observe the treatment, but you don't, and you may record the high-dimensional measurements, but you don't observe the outcome of interest. And so zero shot refers to the model, to the predictive model, and then once you leverage this predictive model to extract a prediction power sample, then it's just classic causal inference.
Thank you. Any other question?
So in the kind of lots of physical rules, so they're all collecting the information based on the couple of shots or more information or tries, right? So, but for the zero shot case, you don't have the kind of the information or enough data for the model to be learning, or how could you represent the causal relationship between the case or the facts.
Okay. So maybe let me just go back to this slide to better summarize the problem. Okay, maybe I understand your concern, and maybe the zero-shot phrasing here may sound misleading, but it's just referring to the predictive model. So, do you agree that on a new experiment, if we add the outcome of interest, and this is a well-designed experiment, we can run some causal inference? Okay?
Yes.
Now, what we miss to run this causal inference is this outcome of interest. We don't observe it directly. Okay? We only have access to high-dimensional measurements of that outcome of interest. What we can do, we hope that we can retrieve this outcome of interest from the high-dimensional measurements through a model. Okay? This could be a human annotator. Okay? But hopefully a deep learning model. Okay? Trained on similar data. Okay? So in this predictive generalization task, okay, we use the expression zero shot because we never train the model on the target distribution of X. Now, in order to transfer, like you need to rely on some transferability assumption, which I haven't discussed in the details in the summary of the theorem I shared before. But the main idea is that if your encoder is powerful enough, so it's extracting sufficient representation, and the experiments are similar, then enforcing this causal lifting constraint is allowing you to transfer.
But this is only a very simple case, right? So for this, is that possible for the complex environment or complex problems? Might it be also possible to generate causal relations based on the zero shot or few shot? If it's just a training deep learning model?
No. The point is that we are not. The problem is kind of split in two steps, and we are not doing causal inference zero shot. You need a well-designed experiment to do causal inference. So what we are doing zero shot is just the prediction of the outcome model. Oh, sorry, of the missing outcome, and then no, I think that I'm not sure I understood what you mean with zero shot causal inference, but per se, like without having a well-designed target experiment, it's not possible to do it zero shot.
Yeah, last question. Hey, thanks for your talk. Just one question regarding the use of X and then Y as a transformation of X. So if I understand correctly, there's this recording or sort of this like a behavior that's happening, and then part of that behavior you consider a target, whereas other part of that behavior goes into sort of what is capital X here, right? So couldn't there be an interaction between sort of G hat of X and X, but interaction as in like mutual causation? So could the behavior no grooming cause parts of the recording, whereas other parts of the recording cause no grooming, since they're both behaviors?
Okay. Eventually, okay, in this specific problem, we consider each video as a single observation for causal inference. But when we are trying to annotate what's going on, we treat the problem, we treat the video as a collection of frames which are dependent among each other. But then we aim to classify each frame. For sure, there are temporal dependencies. We are not really modeling the causal structure in this sequential data. We're just focusing on the properties of this predictor for this causal downstream task, and this could be surely be investigated.
Okay, I guess it could be interesting to have
Yep.
time sequence models.
Absolutely. No. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everybody. So we can continue the questions on the coffee time. Let's thank the speaker again.